thank you to the truckers out there for what they do. We know you got a thankless job. We know you work hard and keep this country moving. So thanks to all the truckers on behalf of myself and OOIDA for what y'all do.
Hey everybody, Todd Dills here, your host for this edition of Overdrive Radio for April 21, 2025, checking in with the man behind the voice you heard at the top, Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association Executive VP Lewie Pugh. When Pugh and I talked at the Mid-America Trucking Show, he was fresh off a whirlwind of a whole lot of other talking himself, including a Matt's opening breakfast panel discussion that you heard here a couple weeks back, then prior to that on Wednesday, the week of the truck show, in the halls of Congress, where he joined a panel of trucking and other industry reps to talk through significant issues ahead of the highway bill reauthorization due next year. Pugh made headlines for his urging of federal reps to get a handle on the scope of so-called non-domiciled CDLs, issued by states to residents of foreign countries here in the U.S. to work OTR and other industries on a temporary basis. It's an issue that's risen to prominence this year as attention to it has increased, and it's but one of the issues Pugh addressed there, likewise in what follows here today on the podcast. But to tee up the conversation, I also wanted to share a little of what I heard in the wake of Matt's from trucker Teresa Brittain, who made note of coverage of the FMCSA session at the truck show, where the agency fielded questions about the prevalence of non-domiciled CDLs, but also lax enforcement of the requirement for English language proficiency that's in the commercial driver regulations today. They used to be treated by the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance of inspectors and industry as an out-of-service violation. Yet when CVSA removed that out-of-service violation about a decade ago now, FMCSA subsequently relaxed guidance on how to enforce the English language violation itself. Paired with some DOT guidance changes for states around non-domiciled CDLs that happened later, foreign residents coming into the country to work over the road with a CDL by some accounts got things simplified a great deal for them. How many such people are working in the U.S. today? Nobody can really answer that question, as has been evident from Overdrive's Alex Lockey's ongoing reporting around the issue. Teresa Brittain flagged the importance of the English language proficiency regs, though, particularly when it comes to roadside inspections. She noted a conversation at Matt's she had with the Kentucky State Truck Enforcement about the issue. As she asked me, quote, "How does any state law enforcement officer do an inspection on the truck if the driver cannot follow instructions to inspect it?" End quote. At Matt's, she said, inspectors told her essentially they can inspect such an operator's truck, quote, "for their own safety. They told me they give 15 minutes after the initial request for the driver to contact their company, provide driver's license and required paperwork, then just let them go if the paperwork is compliant. No inspection for the truck." Considering such dynamics, Teresa Brittain then quipped, "Next inspection I get, I'm speaking Martian." There's a movement among OOIDA and some others in CVSA to get the English proficiency violation back into the out-of-service criteria for these and other reasons, which you'll hear about in my talk with Lewie Pugh in today's podcast.
Because even if motor care enforcement writes them a ticket for the violation of speaking English, they're not inspecting the truck because they ain't getting under no truck with somebody who can't speak English, which I don't blame them. I wouldn't either.
Right.
I mean, some guys that speak English will be a little afraid to get under their truck, but
OOIDA, along with some from the law enforcement community, actually petitioned CVSA to return English proficiency to the out-of-service criteria. And CVSA's spring workshop event is but 1 week away. Pugh noted owner-operators might stay tuned for any news on that front in the coming couple of weeks. It's but one of several issues we touched on in the conversation that follows here, and that Pugh urged owners among OOIDA members and others to continue to engage with lawmakers and the government generally on.
Because we can't do it by ourselves, they can't do it by themselves, but we can score touchdowns together.
On the other side of a break, we'll drop into the conversation with Pugh. Likewise, along the way, hearing from the Racetrack Travel Center's marketing manager, Nick LaFalce, about the growth in his company's mostly southeast regional network of truck stops and what was once mainly just a fuel stop network for automobiles, principally. Since 2018, the Racetrack company's been expanding high-flow diesel options and acquiring land to even add some parking options here and there. He details it all before we get to the end for this edition of Overdrive Radio, so keep tuned.
Your diesel engine works hard. Powell's Diesel Defender works harder, while adding maximum lubricity to protect your engine from corrosion and improve fuel conductivity. Defender uses specialized IDX4 detergent to rapidly clean fuel injectors and prevent the return of harmful deposits. It safely removes water, which helps inhibit microbial growth and leaves only pure fuel to burn. That'll get you a guaranteed 5% increase in fuel economy or more. Want better power and performance? Get Howes Diesel Defender.
Find more information about Diesel Defender at HOWES, houseproducts.com. Now, here's Lewie Pugh reflecting on a question I asked about the spot where we sat right in that moment during our conversation at the OOIDA booth at the Mid-America Trucking Show. Lewie Pugh's personal history with MATS goes way back to the beginning of his owner-operator career and membership in the association, later serving on the board, too.
First time I came to MATS, I think, was in 1996.
Okay.
It was a whole different world then. Joined OOIDA in 1996. I came to MATS in 1996. And I think I bought my first truck in 1996.
Okay.
96 was a big year.
That's a big year for you.
Yeah, it was either 95 or 96. I bought my first truck. But yeah, and that was the first time me and my buddies came to MATS. We came every year for, I don't know, about 4 or 5 years.
Right.
And then I didn't come for a little while. And then I got on the board in 2004. And then I started coming down here for OOIDA.
I think the board elections that were going on last time we talked all said and done.
Yeah, board of directors, the election's over. 3 people will be appointed as alternates, and we'll have our first board meeting in May.
Among new board alternates is Mike Nichols, whom Overdrive readers will recall as an Overdrive Trucker of the Year contender in 2024. Big congrats due to Nichols for sure, and I think it's safe to say we can expect plenty from the Wisconsin-based owner-operator in terms of outreach to the public on core issues, of which there are many, of course. Other new board alternates, all of whom you'll find listed at OOIDA.com in the About section of the site, is owner-operator Casey Mulder out of Michigan, and Grover Nelson of Arkansas is going on 2 years of service there now. When I caught up with Lewie Pugh at MATS, he was fresh off of testimony before the House of Representatives Highways and Transit Subcommittee, as noted at the top, where witnesses outlined for reps top issues of concern for trucking in advance of expected reauthorization of funding for highway programs next year. You can find reporting from that hearing and links I'll put in the show notes for the podcast wherever you're listening, and listen on for some discussion with Pugh of OOIDA's chief points of emphasis. Others in the hearing representing agriculture and larger carriers were among those in agreement on more than just one issue needing particular attention.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement on parking, 100%. I think there's some pretty good agreements on training, those are probably the 2 big things that we want to see on highway safety. I think there's pretty much agreements on pay, with the people that were on that hearing. I'm not saying everybody in trucking, because there's other organizations that weren't there. They don't agree on the pay part, but I'd say there was a lot. The ones that were there were agreeing pay. And then the disagreements, of course, was size and weights, longer, heavier. That was a huge disagreement. Some people continue to confuse a driver turnover for a driver shortage problem. So there's that issue that was a little disagreement on. Those were probably the 2 biggest disagreement agreed on items.
On the issue of compensation, overtime pay guarantees for company employee drivers, removing the motor carrier exemption from those requirements in the Fair Labor Standards Act, are high on the list for the association. Legislation to require motor carriers to pay overtime was revived in early March on a bipartisan basis in both houses of Congress after seeing no final action in both previous Congresses. Yes, that's going back 4 years running now.
Yeah, it was reintroduced a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah, Van Drew introduced it about 2 weeks ago. I mean, it's the same as last year. We're for it. Drivers are for it. And the American Trucking Association, of course, against it. So, they have their reason.
What kind of reception did you get from the Congress over that issue?
A couple members touched on it and supported it. I had no pushback on Congress. Again, I think it's like a lot of things in Congress. Everybody agrees it needs to be done. I don't know how anybody that's a congressman can look a constituent in the eye and say, hey, trucker, you work 70 hours. You don't deserve time and a half. I find it fascinating that ATA can do that when they have all these drivers that work for these fleets. you can say you're worried about safety and you care about truckers, but you don't think they deserve time and a half. I think it's talking out both sides of your mouth. But, I think it's like, it's trying to get Congress to change, not necessarily change their thinking, but to get the intestinal fortitude to just go ahead and do it. Right. They don't. I mean, we can't get them to pass a parking bill that nobody's against. Right. So, that's the problem in this Congress. And it's a problem we've had for quite a few years in D.C. It's just like people, they want to talk, they want to do news bites, but when it comes down to where the rubber meets the road, there's just nobody wants to move because everybody's worried about their job in 2 more years,
Right. It's like a constant campaign. I know.
It's so frustrating. I mean, it's crazy when states and DOT and FMCSA and trucking, all of trucking, truck stops, we're all in line on this whole parking issue, and we can't pass that. So when it gets to stuff like the overtime pay and stuff like that, it just makes it that much more hard, even though it's right. And they know it's right. The thing that really frustrates us is Trump's out there saying they're not going to tax overtime when truckers can't even get overtime, and the truckers that do get overtime aren't going to get that tax benefit because it's tied to the Fair Labor Standards Act and the exemption. So they'll have to still pay taxes even though they get overtime. So it's just one more time truckers get screwed.
Restoring per diem benefits for company drivers.
Per diem deductions for employee truck drivers were axed during the tax legislation passed during the first Trump administration, and restoring that benefit is among action items OOIDA hopes for with new tax legislation.
Yeah, and that wasn't brought up at the hearing because it's not really under T&I's purview. Yeah. I mean, really, driver pay is under their purview either. But we are campaigning pushing for it and trying to get them to put the per diem back in for employee drivers for sure. And they took that out like the night before it dropped because we were assured it was going to stay in there and they weren't going to pull it on truckers, and then they did.
Oh, they did? Okay.
Yeah, that was one of those last minute in the middle of the night deals.
Okay.
Which that kind of stuff's really frustrating. We hope Jason Smith, we've been trying to get a meeting with him because he's the chair of the committee that oversees this. And he's from Missouri. And I met with him before. He's got relatives that were truckers. So we're hoping that he puts it back.
In terms of that tax legislation, that's due to either be continued or new package or kind of revert back to what was in place previously.
They got to renew it. There's no reason that employee drivers shouldn't get the per diem, and they should be able to get they should be able to itemize it right off their road expenses too. They got to eat all their meals out. They got to buy gloves. They got to buy this. You're buying things at a truck stop, which is usually an inflated price because they have a captured audience. And parking. I mean, we're seeing all these pay-to-park places, but most fleets won't reimburse the driver. Right. At least if they reimburse the driver for parking, or if they don't, they could at least itemize it and write that off.
The compensation challenges of owner-operators and employee drivers, too, is directly related to the transparency, the broker transparency issue in a lot of ways. I feel like in terms of just allowing at least owner-operators and fleets that are working with brokers to sort of have more clarity on on the practices of who they're doing business with and the fairness of them. Did that come up in that congressional hearing? I mean,
that's over at FMCSA. Falls in there. Yeah. They just closed their comment period. But you're right. It lets you, if you haul load for somebody, it gives you ability to see if that person's treating you fairly or not. And if you're a good broker and you treat people fairly, this shouldn't bother you. And it also is a big thing when it comes to claims, because that's where we see the real problem here. We see this all the time with that, the big freaking 3-letter acronym broker that, a guy will deliver a load, get a clean bill of lading. A month later, he gets a freaking charge back saying there was a claim on the load. They won't give him any documentation or proof because they said, well, you waived your right. We don't have to show you. Just pay us. And then they use cross-collateralization to hold money on other loads, and it just becomes this big mess. And I mean, if it's a legitimate claim, then show them the paperwork that it's a legitimate claim. It's hard to believe that they're not making money off of these things.
Most truckers have cargo insurance. I mean.
Yeah. Well, and it depends on what happens, whether your cargo insurance pays for it and all that. I mean, there is that restrictions, but again, transparency shows honesty.
Sure.
And if you're being honest, you shouldn't have no reason not to be transparent. That's the way I look at it. If this person really did something wrong, then show them what they did, let them pay, and everybody moves on. Okay, well, I screwed up. I deliver a load, and I get a clean bill of lading, and I leave. I don't know what that customer did. How do I know the guy in the dock didn't break it or steal it or whatever else happened to it?
A topic that did come up in the Congressional Highways and Transit Subcommittee was the potential to expand options for splitting the sleeper berth in the hours of service.
Yeah, OOIDA wants to see that. We were hoping that was going to get into the last hours of service change. But, especially for teams and stuff like that, it makes so much more sense for them to, be able to split it however they want. But, at the end of the day, you're allowed to drive 11 hours. So what's the matter if you do it in 7 and 3 or 5 and 6?
Right.
As long as you're doing it, you're getting your 10-hour breaks. That's no problem with all this stuff so often is you can't run a human being like a machine. I can't just hit a button, turn you on, hit a button, turn you off. So, we got to put some flexibility. Now, I always caution because you have to do it in a way that shippers and receivers or motor carriers can't take advantage of your free time because we know that happens. But at the end of the day, you need some sort of flexibility. So if you want to take a nap or you're not feeling well or you just don't want to be in traffic, and it makes common sense.
And right now, the only way you can kind of preserve your running duty clock is if you stop for 2 hours, 30 minutes.
I'd like to see if they'll stop the clock on either line.
Yeah.
The big clock. But again, you gotta be careful because then
take advantage of that.
Then you get shippers and receivers that know and they take advantage of it. So it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, sure.
But if we pay drivers overtime, that fixed the problem. If employee drivers were getting paid while they were sitting at that shipper and receiver for all those time, I bet they'd load the trucks a lot quicker.
Combinations there of an incentive for owner-operators and drivers to rest with more options for stopping the 14-hour clock, with a disincentive for shippers and receivers to abuse that ability with long dock delays in the form of paid overtime, Pugh and I know many others out there feel might go a long way toward increasing efficiency and safety in the long term, not to mention leaving more money in owners' pockets or boosting revenues with more freight moved on less time spent. Finally, during the Highways and Transit Subcommittee hearing, Lewie Pugh also raised the issue of a degree of growth in issuance of those so-called non-domiciled CDLs to drivers working temporarily in the United States but who reside outside the country, something OOIDA notes was facilitated by CDL guidance changes around such licenses back more than a half-decade ago now, with folks obtaining temporary visas to work legally in the United States. Combined with some relaxation of English proficiency regs enforcement at roadside and the natural disincentive for an officer to get up under a truck to inspect brakes when he or she's not certain the operator at the controls can understand his or her direction, well, some see a basic safety problem in the dynamics on the road today. It's certain the presence of commercial operators from other countries has grown in prominence since then. Yet, talk to different people and you'll get a different answer as to just how much more prominent or not. In the committee hearing, Pugh echoed realities he also spoke to in our conversation, questioning why an oversupplied driver market in the U.S. needs CDL drivers in the United States on a temporary basis. Also finding what Overdrive's own Alex Lockey has found when it comes to the fundamentally unknown nature of the basic size of the population of U.S. state-licensed commercial drivers with permanent addresses outside U.S. borders. Things have changed significantly over the last half-decade and more, in any case, that's sure.
It's totally changed. And the sad thing is, we don't know how big or bad this problem is. What started this was in 2015, of course. First big shooter drop. CVSA took the non-English speaking out of service. And then, still a violation, but it's not out of service. So we know what happens is even if motor carrier enforcement writes them a ticket for the violation of speaking English, they're not inspecting the truck because they ain't getting under no truck with somebody who can't speak English, which I don't blame them. I wouldn't either.
Right.
Some guys that speak English, I'd be a little afraid to get under their truck. But so you got that. And then in 2019, we went to this non-domiciled CDL stuff being allowed, which, I think everybody thought it was just from state to state. Right. I don't think anybody realized the ramification that we were opening the barn door. to let everybody in. And that's what we struggle with now. OOIDA has been trying to figure out how big this is, but nobody's keeping track. We can't find where anybody's keeping track of it. We have no idea who is getting them, where they're coming from, who they are, anything, which is pretty daggone scary in today's world. To be fair, we're going through the longest trucking recession in history. People are frustrated. People are tired. I mean, that makes people naturally want to look for the bad person or the boogeyman. I don't think this is a boogeyman, but that's why we've been trying to figure it out. But I can tell you this much. If we don't know how many of these are out there, we don't know who they are, and nobody's keeping track, that's a huge problem and a huge safety concern, not only just for the highway safety, but for the sovereignty of our nation. It's a pretty scary thing because, you can do a lot of bad things with a truck if you are a bad person. So that's the scary thing here for sure. I mean, we know it's definitely been on an uptick. So we need to get this figured out. And, at the end of the day, if you can't read or speak the English language, it's also a big safety concern driving an 80,000-pound vehicle down the road when you can't read the signs and the warnings and all that other stuff.
Another part of the English proficiency requirement that changed just after CVSA removed the violation from the out-of-service criteria, as we've chronicled in reporting around the issue going back some time now, is that FMCSA itself relaxed guidance around enforcement of the violation, noting drivers could demonstrate the ability to communicate effectively with technology aids or via interpretation and the like. Pugh had this to say about potential changes to that guidance.
I know that they've been asked by enforcement now that Trump did this whole English thing, if they're going to change their guidance. So there's that. And then we've repetitioned CVSA along with the state of an officer in the state of Tennessee to put this back in the out of service. So we'll see what happens into April with CVSA.
The CVSA Spring Workshop is happening in New Orleans April 27th through May 1st, as Pugh referenced there. So we'll keep ears to the ground for some news on that front. In any case, the association's efforts to elevate issues of concern for its members is only really possible, Pugh said, ultimately, with their support.
All these hearings and all this stuff that we're doing, the hard work that my DC staff is doing constantly on Capitol Hill, and the great things that OOIDA's doing, we couldn't do it without our members. But what makes this go farther and the way we really make changes is now that we've put the ball on the field, our members need to be calling out to their lawmakers, reaching out to the lawmakers to move that ball up the field. Because we can't do it by ourselves. They can't do it by themselves. But we can score touchdowns together.
Big thanks to Lewie Pugh for his time at the busy Mid-America Trucking Show. And now, on to another interview conducted there for Overdrive Radio with the marketing manager for a network of fuel stops in the Southeast that, are starting to look in many instances more like bona fide truck stops. That'd be Nick LaFalce of Racetrack Travel Centers. Since 2018, the company's been transitioning a variety of its C-store fuel station combos into stops with full-flow diesel pumps and, in some instances, actual long-term truck parking viable sites with parking that's fee-based after the first 4 hours. More on that in my talk with LaFalce. Yeah, it's been quite a transformation for a company that I well recall from my youth in Rock Hill, South Carolina as simply a gas station. Some things that I remember from way back then remain. The company prides itself on its fuel pricing with a mission to deliver the lowest possible pump price to those using its facilities. Increasingly, they're catered specifically to the on-highway professional. Here's Nick LaFalce setting up how the company's Southeast Heavy network transformed over the last 7 or so years.
It all started back in 2018. For about the past 85 years, this company's been building predominantly C-stores and gas stations for the, like you and I, the forecourt consumer. Back in 2018, we built our first site in Blairsbridge in Atlanta, Georgia, Lithia Springs. It was just originally a C-store, and we had enough space in the back lot. We decided to add diesel lanes in the back to see if we could be a fit for the drivers in the area. So after that, we originally just built that store with the diesel lanes in the back, and we thought, well, we're getting a bunch of drivers. Why don't we expand the store and add a section in for professional driver merchandise and a lounge? And since then, it's just been a rapidly growing program where we saw a lot of success in that area. So we started to build out 2 formats of stores for Racetrack. We have 93 right now, but it's split between what you call a travel center. So the travel center is going to be what has the Catskills, the paid parking, like a lounge inside, professional driver merchandise. And then we have what we call like an extended diesel offering store, and that's just going to be your C store with diesel lanes in the back, like 2 to 4 diesel lanes. We do offer depth of the pump at all sites as well. So since this program started, we've grown pretty rapidly. We currently have 93 sites across both our brands, Racetrack and Raceway. We will be over 100 sites this year for high flow diesel. So that means between our two brands across 14 different states. Predominantly, in our footprint, like Florida, Georgia, Texas, and the Southeast, and then we're up in the Midwest now in Ohio and Indiana. You can stop at any of our locations and really have that truck accessible entrance with the diesel lanes and that experience. We're trying to be like your midday fill up. We don't have showers and laundry, but we think we're a good fit in terms of like when a driver wants a quick on the go stop, like a splash and dash as we like to call it. It's we're really a good fit there.
You've probably caught the reference to quote unquote paid parking. I asked about the utility owners might get out of the possibility to reserve spaces if paid parking is the model at all stores where longer-term parking is in fact available. It's still a work in progress, generally speaking, as you'll hear.
We're kind of exploring it still. So at 30 of the sites that we do offer the parking, it's 4 hours free if you show up, and then usually we sell you an overnight hang tag, and the pricing is just dependent on the area. We try to keep it around $15 to $20 if cheaper if we can, just depending on the area. We are testing a pilot program at 12 of our sites through a website called ParkX. I think they have an app as well. Basically, that allows drivers to reserve beforehand, and then that's $20 at all the sites. I know that for sure at the sites we offer. And that'll be our traditional travel center stores. So a lot of our sites up 65, down in Florida up I-75. Those are really where we offer the big lots with the parking off the interstate and what the drivers probably are expecting. And just for people that don't know, we do have usually around 15 to 30 spots at all of our sites. That's the amount of parking we have. I know parking's a big desire. It's real estate play, and it's usually when we're building a travel center, I want to say it's 8 to 10 acres of land that we buy to plot that out. So we try to fit it where we can, but yeah, that's not our primary offering. It's just where we try to meet the drivers where they are. I wouldn't say it's the leading thing about our sites. We're fuel and a really great inside hot food offer is what we're trying to pitch here.
I can personally vouch for one thing about the Racetrack in-store offer. After a stop in Elizabethtown, Kentucky at a site where parking is available, one of those he just mentioned there. Likewise, an earlier stop between Athens and Atlanta, Georgia, several weeks before Matt's. That was a stop that didn't look to have a lot of parking, but certainly was packed to the gills for diesel fill-up on the Wednesday I was driving through. Both stores were outfitted with single-cup, fresh-ground coffee machines, as you've no doubt seen in a variety of other C-stores out there lately. And man, coffee I got out of them was quite good, to say the least.
Yeah, it's we like to say it's crazy good. That's part of our inside offer. It's we really just stick to the hot coffee. We also have really great chicken sandwiches. We make our own pizza made to order in store. So that's you can also get it from the pizza bar that we have in the store, and it's same offering of all the snacks and stuff. And one of the cool parts is we try to experiment where we can, what works. We'll try wings. We'll see if we want to do chicken tenders. We have a waffle breakfast sandwich that we bring in occasionally. It's an LTO, so it comes in at certain parts of the year, but it's really cool.
All 30 some odd travel center sites in the network are open 24 hours a day, and as for the C-store with diesel sites,
that's our goal, is to be open 24 hours, for all the stores. Sometimes, occasionally, at certain in certain areas when it's a more rural area, maybe we have only one person there and we have to just be the fuel. But all of our professional driver truck diesel sites they're all 24/7. So, and those are the travel centers are very well staffed. It's we really those get a lot of traffic, and we have the people to support it late at night for the drivers that are coming in late. Part of the reason why at our store support center, we kind of have to shift around our holiday days we get, because our operations are 24/7, 365. So it's we really want to be there for the associates out in the field who are maybe working during Christmas or Thanksgiving, or just any time of the day, the weekends. It's nonstop. Definitely part of it's work from home, the evolution of people are the forecourt consumers like you and I. It's less traffic you see in general, and so with guest counts overall for that forecourt being down just because of trends in electrification of vehicles. People are charging at home, or they're just working from home, or they're not actually doing a commute anymore. that's kind of where the area of opportunities open up, where we kind of pivoted to support like the professional driver. We've seen a lot of growth in this business as we kind of get up to speed to what a lot of the nationals are doing, whether it's like field partnerships or payment acceptance or, just building more sites along freight corridors that a lot of guys are running. So, it's I think that's where we see an area of opportunity and why we're kind of pivoting. It's it's a shift in the industry, and it's not to say we don't still we get a significant amount of forecourt traffic. That's one of the appeals of our sites is they're very friendly just to the average Joe as well, not just for professional drivers. And we meet in the middle. It's if you're a driver, you'll have your own area to enter the store. It's separate, but you can also go in the front and get your snacks, whatever you want. It's a really good, clean experience. We have our two brands, Racetrack and Raceway. So Racetrack Rewards is our foremost what we push the most. It's our app where we offer a catalog of items that you can redeem in store. You get points for fueling and inside purchases. We also run targeted promos throughout the year. So if you're looking for deals on our pizza or Monster, we offer that. And then I also wanted to mention for Raceway, our franchisee brand, they just launched their own loyalty program as well. So that's it's a little bit different with that one because the franchisees have to operate or they have to agree to operate the rewards program at their stores. But we have a bunch of our partners that we're working with. I think it's over 15 sites right now. We're offering that for and it's very professional driver focused for that rewards program. So we try to push both. If for fleets with fuel discounts and everything like that, payment acceptance, that is all linked with Raceway and Racetrack. So if a fleet has a fuel deal, you can get it at Racetrack and Raceway, same thing. It's just when it comes to the rewards program, it's two separate kind of programs. One thing that's really cool that we like to do, you may hear about Truck Driver Appreciation Week in September. We run that as a whole promo for the entire month of September. We call it Truck Driver Appreciation Month versus the week. And that was really cool because in past years, we've kind of done it as a meal deal where they can save when they buy stuff. But this past year, we just did it, no strings attached. They got free hot food every week when they came in. And you don't even need to fuel up. We'd love for you to fuel with us, but it's really just stop by, try us out, try our inside offer. We did 1 week it was a slice of pizza, breakfast sandwich was the other week, and we did a burger 1 week, and then we did 2 times points for the month. So that's something I really want to let the drivers know about is we're going to try to continue to do a really aggressive offer this year and would love for them to try us out during September. We have a fuel card program like the Racetrack Elite Universal Fuel Card. That can be used on the high flow diesel canopies, not typically, but we accept many other popular payments like EFS and ComData, so we'll discount and we're a part of many partner programs across the United States. So if you're on an RXO fuel card or an Astic fuel card, we accept those. So it's just got to look, and usually we try to do a good job of letting those partners know that we're on the network and that we accept the card. So it's a popular thing for us, and it's kind of how we drive a lot of traffic. And I also will say we have some of the lowest street diesel prices across any of the competitors here. If you look at us, comparison to a Love's, a TA, or a Pilot, we'll often be 20 or 30 cents cheaper on the street for diesel. And especially if you're an owner-operator, maybe you don't have a fuel card, or maybe you're participating in less programs, we can give you a bunch of savings up front without even needing to have a negotiated deal, which I think is really a popular thing for us. And then just for, if people are interested, we do have a travel center page on our website now. It's under fleet services. So if they just go to racetrack.com/fleet services, we have a dedicated high flow diesel network page, which talks about what we offer, where we offer it, rewards program, cards we accept, all that stuff.
You can also find much of the same information and more in the Racetrack app too.
We just added a cool functionality. It's a route planner. So basically a driver can use it like Google Maps, and they can put in 2 coordinates, and then we'll show all of the racetracks along the route with the amenities you want, and we'll also show you the diesel price in the app. So if you're looking for I know I'm going to go from Atlanta to my hometown of Orlando, it'll show you all the sites in terms of we're in Valdosta, if you want to stop off to the side and near Dublin, it's we'll show you where those sites are. I want to say we have about 22 sites left in the pipeline for this year. Don't quote me on that one, but it's we'll definitely be over 100 by the end of the year. So it's we're planning to fill out. We just built sites in Ohio and Indiana, so I fully expect as we build out our presence, we're going to fill in the lanes coming back to our main footprint of Florida and Georgia. So here in Kentucky, we call this a decentralized market because we only have 4 stores, but we're adding another one here in Kentucky. It's Bowling Green, I want to say, is the one that's upcoming. It's a travel center. And then, we'll just try to fill in where we can. And it's, I fully expect in the next couple of years, we'll try to push 200. we're really growing fast, and we make it a goal to like try to add like upwards of 20 sites a year. It's really just like the construction deadlines and the permitting that ends up holding us up. You know, that's always a challenge. So.
In short, as we saw from Overdrive Senior Editor Matt Cole's report around the Etri Research Organization's new look at barriers to public truck parking, published just last week, private parking faces a good deal of similar barriers in permitting, land acquisition cost, and the rest. In any case, Racetrack's network is only set to grow from its base in the southeast and probably a good option for shorter stops. Big thanks for listening. You'll find links to related coverage of many of the issues enumerated by OOIDA's Lewie, Pugh, and Nick LaFalce, Marketing Manager for Racetrack Travel Centers, in the show notes for the podcast wherever you're listening. Overdrive Radio is on Spotify and SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts and YouTube, Overdrive's Facebook page, and any listening platform, really. Leave us a review there if you're enjoying these, and here's a big thanks in advance for it. Overdrive Radio is a production of Overdrive, the voice of the American trucker. It's edited and produced by me, Todd Dills, with the acoustic guitar and other support of trucker songwriter Long Haul Paul Marhofer. The theme is Legend of the Snake Man by Marhofer, featuring the guitar work of Travis, the Snake Man himself, Wemmick. Terry Two Socks Richardson on bass, keys by Tishomingo Jim Whitehead, and on drums, Andrew Marshall. The podcast is backed up further by Overdrive's own social media coordinator, Jasmine Campbell, senior editor, Matt Cole, executive editor, Alex Lockey, and video editors, Lawson Rudisil and Andrew Gwynn. Next week, tune in for a talk with Hope Zavara, latest inductee into the House Hall of Fame, proprietor at Mother Trucker Yoga. Look forward to it. See you then.